All right, welcome to the conversation on the Young Turks. We've got a great reporter that we're going to talk to about some really important news happening right now, including, unfortunately, sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden. Ryan Grimm is with us. He's the Washington bureau chief of The Intercept, also a Young Turks contributor, and as usual, broke a really, really important story. So, Ryan, before we get to your story about Time's Up, for folks who don't know, can you tell us who Tara Reade is and what her accusations are?
Yeah, so Tara Reade was a former staffer for Senator Joe Biden in the early 90s, worked for him in 92, 93. And she came out about a year ago, around the same time that there was a real flurry of news coverage around Joe Biden's problems with personal space, which was kicked off, if you remember, by Lucy Flores, who said, this is a Nevada politician, she said that while she was waiting to go on stage in 2014, the vice president was behind her, started stroking her hair, rubbing her shoulders, gave her a long, uncomfortable kiss on the back of her head, and really really threw her and messed up her abilities to speak and made her feel uncomfortable. And that kicked off kind of a news cycle or two around Joe Biden and his kind of handsiness. There was then pushback to it from particularly on The View, and that's what's relevant to this story, where most of the women on The View said, look, this is Joe Biden. He puts his hands on people. What are you doing complaining? Like, you're tough. Whoopi Goldberg, I think, said, turn around and smack the guy. Which, it is asking a lot of somebody. This is somebody who I believe she was running for lieutenant governor at the time, and she's got the vice president flying to Nevada to campaign for her. So to ask her to turn around and just smack the vice president, basically throwing away her race for lieutenant governor at that point, is asking an awful lot. And so Tara Reade was watching all of this unfold and saw particularly the folks on The View saying, is there really anything to this? If there's so much to this, why haven't other people spoken up? The very similar things had happened to Tara while she was working for Joe Biden. And so she came forward to her local paper and she became part of this national conversation. And she said that he had, uncomfortably on a number of occasions run his fingers through her curly hair in front of people, had kind of rubbed her shoulders, had at one point, and that kind of served as a cocktail waitress at a fundraiser, which she ended up not doing, and it caused some problems in the office. So she came out then, and then immediately she got utterly annihilated online because she lives in Northern California. She'd been watching a bunch of Oliver Stone documentaries about Russia on YouTube. She had a Russian friend in her writing circle, and she was starting to write a novel about that was set in Russia. And so she wrote a couple of pieces on Medium that were extremely flattering toward Russia and toward Vladimir Putin particularly. And immediately people seized on these and said, well, look at this Russian operative who's now making accusations against Joe Biden. And so she completely clammed up, didn't say anything for several months until she kind of came back out of her shell and started reaching out to reporters again in the last summer, which culminated in then going to Time's Up earlier this year to say that she had an additional allegation that she had wanted to tell but hadn't been able to because of kind of she felt like she hadn't been able to because of the kind of crush of the blowback, which was related to a sexual assault that took place while she was working with Biden. So that's kind of the background on who she is.
Right. So before we get to the things that I'm actually most fascinated by in this story, which is the press reaction. There's a Democratic establishment reaction. I think that shows their hypocrisy, but I'm not surprised by it. The press is amazing. But before we get there, we still have some ground to cover here. So I think it was Isaac Edward Dovere. I'm never quite sure how to pronounce his name. That it was the one who mainly attacked her as the Russian operative, right? I mean, because there is an establishment point of view that guy won't back.
Right. No, he's a quite committed ideologue, which is impressive. Like it's most of the centrists that you find in this world are, they're just kind of like whatever. And if the politics move in a different direction, they'll move in a different direction. That guy is deeply committed to his worldview, and so I guess for that you got to respect him. But that's right. So he kind of went on the warpath in posting a lot of these quotes from her Medium posts about Putin, which to be clear, like she's not a Russian operative. Russian operatives don't praise Putin. Because then it exposes them as Russian operatives. Like that's not how you do this kind of thing. If anybody has seen The Americans, they weren't out there telling their neighbors how amazing the USSR was, because then your cover's blown.
Yeah. So look, I read the Medium post, and to say that I'm not a fan of Putin is the world's greatest understatement. And so some of it made me uncomfortable. And I think it's actually fair to ask questions about Tara Reid. I'm not in the camp of believing women means that you don't ask any questions and you assume immediate guilt. I don't think that anybody's really in that camp. It just means hear them out, take their allegations seriously and credibly, which was the rule until Tara Reid. And now that rule apparently no longer exists. We're going to get to that in a second. But I mean, the writer we're talking about writes at Politico and has never met a progressive he didn't want to destroy, and hasn't written an incredibly mean article about. But the reason that I bring him up here, because it isn't about him. Who cares about him? I personally, I don't know him from Adam, and I don't care. It's that if you were gonna have a negative story about a progressive that you wanted to plant, he's the guy you would go to. You would get your Oppo research people to go, oh my God, I found something on Medium. Let me give it to Isaac Edward, presumably Dovere, and he'll write it, and he did. So the minute you say Russian Washington, it not only ends the conversation, and everybody who's watched the Young Turks knows I don't agree with anybody on Russia. I don't agree with the establishment. I don't agree with the people who call it Russiagate, etc. I have a unique opinion on that, But in Washington, it's also a code word for illegitimate. Don't touch. Right?
Right.
So now, in this case, though, Tara Reid's accusations, And this is also an interesting point about her credibility, and these are things that need to be discussed. Her allegations went from touching my hair, etc., asking me to serve at this party, to far worse. And so we've talked about in the show, and it's super uncomfortable to talk about all these stories are, but I'll tell the audience, and then you'll tell us what happened with Time's Up. So she went on Katie Halper's show. She explained it. She went on Rising. She most importantly went to Time's Up, the people who are supposed to pursue this and help women in this situation. And she said it was actually worse. One time he pushed me up against the wall, went under my skirt, inside my skirt, and penetrated me with his fingers. So that is devastating. That is a very, very serious charge. And again, Young Turks, we don't follow any of the rules. Previous rules were you're not even allowed to talk about the severity of the charge. Any charge they're all equal. I remember people telling me this and yelling at me for this. And we didn't agree then. We don't agree now. To me, touching people's hair and making them uncomfortable is terrible. And the vice president shouldn't do that. That's an abuse of his power. He should at least have enough sense to know that people feel uncomfortable about that. But the kind of sexual assault that Tara Reade is describing now is a whole different level and clearly massively important.
Can you name the representative of your district?
The representative of my district, oof.
I have no idea.
I actually don't know who the representative of my district is.
Do you know what the corporate tax rate is?
I think it's pretty high. I should know this.
Like in between 20, 25%. I don't know.
How many amendments are in the U.S. Constitution?
Oh no.
This brings me back to grade school.
I should know this because I was a history major, but I do not remember.
I don't know that.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
Nope.
I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know? I didn't know. It's time to change that. We live in the best country in the world. We live in the most powerful country in the world. We love our American freedom, but only half of us take part in the political process. Only half of us vote. We don't fulfill our duties as U.S. citizens to make this country a better place. It's time that we use our voices as a team, as a country, to become better. We will stand up. We will be empowered. We will stay educated and informed about politics every single day because it's our responsibility. And Politiscope just made it easy for you. So join me, join us, and let's be Americans.
The TYT affiliate program's finally here. Now you think, finally, I didn't know about it, but I did. I've been waiting to do this for a long, long time. Why? Because it's the best win-win we got. When we make money, you make money. When you make money, we make money. Hey, that's how we're supposed to do it as progressives. We're supposed to do it together. So this way, we're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. How many times have I told you that? And now in this case, that actually even applies to us selling membership together. Now look, another part of the win is that you get to spread the message about the progressive point of view. And that's awesome. So we're doing good in the world, but on top of that, you get commission on it. So all you gotta do is set up your free account. Once you complete that easy process, you receive your free personalized link, and then you start sharing that with everybody, and then voila, you're in the ball game. Look guys, I'd ask you to do this anyway because it's important to spread the message and it's important to keep the lights on to support independent media and the home of progressives. But in this case, I think it's even better because then we get to grow together, and you know, every little bit helps, not just for us, but for you guys. So if this could be a nice way to get a little bit extra cash while doing something wonderful in the world, well, I love that. So that's why we thought of this, and we hope that you participate. And I'm really, really psyched about it. Let's do this together.
Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump can use military funds to build his border wall.
Source that I saw in their mouths.
I believe that. To acquit Donald Trump.
2020 is endgame. Everything. If progressives win, we're done apologizing. They should apologize to us for all that they have done to us 1,000 times over. So she goes to Time's Up, and Ryan, this is where your reporting picks it up. What happened?
Right. So So Time's Up is this organization that was founded out of the Me Too movement, had the most successful GoFundMe campaign in the site's history, raised $24 million just there, on top of all the money they've raised elsewhere, and they've put that toward defending women who work in male-dominated industries, who are victims of sexual harassment or assault, and they fund both legal cases and PR work on behalf of those women. They've worked on behalf of a bunch of the Weinstein victims. They've done a lot of terrific work over the years, and they're the place that if you are a victim who wants to come forward, that you want to go to. So she reached out in January of this year, said, I have this story, and she was moving along. Her initial conversations with Time's Up were productive, and they referred her to a number of attorneys and told her, we have this nonprofit fund that can help you with legal bills and with PR, which she needed. She's a working class person who can't swing the giant retainer for the lawyers that this would cost. And then a few weeks later, as it continued to go on, in another call with a director, she was told, it turns out that we can't help you because the person who you're accusing is running for federal office. And we're a tax-exempt 501c3. We can't be engaged in electioneering, and so therefore we can't fund your legal case. We can't fund any of the PR around you. We're still happy to refer you to our network of attorneys, but if they want to work for money, then we can't help you out. And we wish you the best. We support you, but we can't do that for you. Now, I talked to a couple of tax lawyers who said that's not a reasonable interpretation of tax law. I mean, first of all, you have to worry about risk. Like, it is the Trump administration's IRS going to is the Biden administration, like if Biden actually goes on to win, or is the Trump administration going to come after this 501c3 for coming after Joe Biden with an allegation like this? That's just completely implausible. And so,
right. So yes,
but also the legal question is, just real quickly, the legal question is, if you have a set of criteria, we represent women who have allegations against men in male-dominated industries who've done X, Y, and Z, then as long as your case fits that, it doesn't matter if the person is running for federal office. That's what a lot of tax lawyers told me. So as long as they follow that criteria, they should have been okay.
Yeah. So look, to me, that's super obvious, but I want to press on that a little bit. So have they never criticized the politician? Did they not speak out about Al Franken? I genuinely don't know. Right. That's why I'm asking you, because they're all running for federal office. Right. They all run for re-election.
So there was if you remember, there was a California case, where they were active participants in that one. Now, I guess that wouldn't be a federal case, but I don't think you can use tax-exempt money for a state election either. Most of the cases they do are actually in the business community and in entertainment and elsewhere. But this scenario would rule out representing somebody who had a case against Donald Trump, any member of the House of Representatives, any senator, that feels that feels a bit strange for the type of organization that they are.
That's insane. So if a woman comes up and says Mitch McConnell sexually assaulted me, they're going to say whatever, go take it up with someone else.
Right, he's running for office. Yeah.
Yeah, no. First of all, I just flat out don't believe them. Okay, how's that? I don't believe you. I think that if it was a Republican, you definitely would have taken it up. If it was a progressive, you probably would have put bells on and taken it up. Okay, so let's just keep it real. So all of a sudden, this new standard of like, oh, running for office, but we did the state thing, so running for federal office. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. Okay, so let's talk about the nature of power. So Time's Up, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's donors or if it's just Washington zeitgeist, et cetera, decides, hey, we represent everybody that's a victim of sexual assault, except if you were sexually assaulted by a really powerful Democrat. So good night and good luck. Okay. So then the Democratic establishment, of course, closes ranks. Besides which, they then go on to smear her by saying she's a Bernie Sanders supporter. She was an Elizabeth Warren supporter. Apparently, she also supported Marianne Williamson for some time. Yeah, and she's like, I ran out of options. They all dropped out.
She's a Northern Californian. That's where she lives now, and she's true to those politics. And so, that's right. She started out. She even liked Tulsi. She was curious about Tulsi, but liked Marianne Williamson. Then you're right. Then she moved to Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren faded, and she moved to Bernie Sanders. So right, it's not exactly that she's a Bernie bro, and she supported Hillary actually in 2016 over Bernie in the primary. So this is not someone who's been kind of a Bernie bro warrior for 4 years. But for sure, she didn't support Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. Like that, we can certainly grant that and acknowledge that.
All right, so let's talk about the mainstream media here, because to me, that's the most interesting part of the story. So now, by the way, you guys should all know that, and it's in Ryan's story on The Intercept, that if you, they went, she said, I told my mom, my brother, and my friend back then. Her mom has passed away, but both the brother and the friend confirmed that Tari did say back in the 1990s when this happened that Joe Biden had done this to her, to people that know her. That's like the gold standard for, is it true, right? And right. So now New York Times, I don't know, maybe I missed it. Have they covered the story at all, Ryan?
I don't think either the Times or the Post have yet, no.
And how about CNN?
There may have been an article that, so Biden came out publicly with a statement denying it, and releasing a statement from his executive assistant, who was her boss, who also said that she'd never, heard of anything like this. So it's possible CNN did a web article about his denial, but I certainly haven't seen any in-depth coverage. From them.
I haven't seen it on cable news at all. And if anyone did any coverage of it, it was minuscule, because it's nowhere to be found. Not part of the national conversation, completely stonewalled. So, and in fact, Ryan, sorry to hear, apparently you lost your credibility, because when you broke the story about Dr. Blasey Ford, and how Kavanaugh might have done something outrageous to her. You were the most credible reporter in the country. You were an American hero. Now you break a story about Joe Biden in similar circumstances, and all of a sudden Howard Dean and other folks tell me you're not credible anymore. Sorry that happened to you. So let's dive into it, Ryan, before we run out of time. I'm not missing anything, right? There is no actual standard. They're just so biased. They're like, if it happened to a progressive and it was done by an establishment Democrat, we're just not going to cover it because we're the most biased people in America.
I mean, you certainly could take quotes and do a quiz. Was this said by a Republican about Christine Blasey Ford, or was this said by a Democrat about Tara Reid, and I think people would have a coin toss chance of getting through that type of a quiz.
Yeah. So have you heard anything from the rest of the press as to any defense of why they're not covering it? Because what I don't want to do, Ryan, is I don't want to get out and tell everybody it's super credible and she's definitely right, and then not know something, and then it turns out they say, oh, New York Times already knew that she had blah blah blah, whatever it is, right? And they just didn't share it with you, Cenk, and you thought she was credible and she wasn't, right? Like, did they disprove something she said? Like, I don't want to miss it, but right now it looks like it's just as credible a case as I have ever seen.
Yeah, I think people are working on it from what I've been able to gather. And, there's a pandemic going on, which is taking up a lot of people's attention. But, there were no witnesses. So, everybody knows that, it can be established that she worked there. There are, people she told at the time who are credible. One of the people, and I've heard this from some reporters, one of the people who, not her brother, but her friend, has no interest in being public, and is a Republican now. Worked for Ted Kennedy in the 1990s, is now a Republican. That person does not want to be named. So some news outlets certainly are hesitant to go with someone who won't put their name publicly on it. That could have something to do with it to answer your question in the most good faith way possible. But there hasn't been anything, otherwise that has, kind of jumped out and said, oh, whoa, pump the brakes here. This is crazy. Maybe some of the news outlets are having a hard time getting their heads around the Putin writing. That maybe that's part of it. I understand that America is a wild place filled with people with all sorts of wild opinions. You and I, we talk to regular people all the time, and regular people have very irregular opinions. They don't, they don't just parrot exactly what they're hearing on cable television. In fact, there's a good chunk of people, maybe it's 5% of the country, who, if they're told something by cable television, then they automatically believe the opposite until it's proven otherwise. And that's actually the case for her with this Russia thing. She was 2012, she told Russia's a big friend of the United States. Now she's told that Russia is the most evil place on the planet. And so because she's being told that by the mainstream media, she's like, well, that must be a lie. I don't believe that. Because they've lied about so much else. And there are a lot of people like that. And there are reasons that people have that attitude towards the establishment and toward mainstream media information that's pumped their way.
So Ryan, super quick, your honest assessment, if this exact story was about Bernie Sanders, about how he pushed a woman up against the wall and assaulted her this way, is there any chance in the world that the New York Times and every cable news outlet wouldn't have covered it immediately?
No, I think they would have gone for that. I do. I wondered about that. Now it would be so out of character for Sanders that maybe, depending on the specific allegation, there would be some discounting of it. But I think that the impulse would be in that direction, like you said.
They'd believe it immediately, and they wouldn't let anyone question it. And they would immediately call anyone who questioned it illegitimate and supporting a supporter of sexual assault.
Right, and they'd probably enjoy that that charge of hypocrisy. Because a lot of centrists, they resent the left for making them feel like they're impure. You're purer than thou, and so here you are defending sexual assault. So I think they would probably get a real kick out of that.
Yeah. Last thing on this story, if the fact that they actually removed her from Biden's office even if you say, hey, look, that the last part of the story of the up against the wall and all that stuff, et cetera, in judging whether that's true, remember that when she said, hey, Biden told me he liked my legs and that's why he wanted me to serve drinks, they basically fired her for that. So there's already proven history of her complaining about sexual innuendo and harassment at that office and her being removed from it. Do I have that right?
Right. And even the interview was a bit creepy, where she's interviewing with her boss, and Biden comes in and looks at her and says, hire her. Which, the way she tells the story is just, it's quite believable. And you can imagine it going down in a Senate office in 1993 that way. And it kind of fits with what we understand about Joe Biden. So, right, there was.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Ugranic is with you guys on a mediocre Monday afternoon. So, look, there's a lot of stories to get to. Number one, obviously, my haircut.
Story number one, breaking news.
That's right. Look, we cover the news. That's what we do. And the country is abuzz about it, I hear. Is it true that I look like I'm on an Italian soccer team now? I guess.
Oh, God, Jake.
I guess.
You're so ridiculous. Like, you're the most ridiculous person ever. I can't believe you tweeted about it right before we went live.
Well, people wanted to know. They wanted to know. I was hearing from across the country, hey, Jake, what happened with the haircut this weekend?
Everyone wanted.
Yes, it was my wife, and I think she did do a pretty good job. It's a little bit thinner than usual, but we're hanging in there. Okay, now you're also wondering if you come to my one shot. Well, Jake, your shirt seems to say Progressives versus, but who is it versus? Everybody wants to know. Well, it's Progressives versus everybody. Okay, and so that's at shoptyt.com. I mean, what are you doing? You need new clothes. You haven't bought clothes in a month. Let's get real. Okay, shoptyt.com. All right, now lastly, before we get on to theoretically the real news, we need to keep Young Turks healthy. That's no joke. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go. Let's check our thermometer, see how our temperature is doing. Trying to raise $200,000 this month until all of a sudden $68,721.
Damn, it's getting hot in here. So better take off all your clothes.
Don't do that. Whatever you do that. In fact, the only reason I don't have a jacket on because I do my live videos on YouTube without a jacket. That's my weird distinction in the show generally with a jacket is because it's coronavirus. So my wife is using our bedroom to do therapy sessions through Skype. So I can't access the jackets, and that's life. All right, so Old School's tomorrow. We got a lot of shows for you, including this one. For God's sake, let's do it.
Let's do it.
But hydroxychloroquine. Try it, if you'd like. The other thing, if you have a heart condition, I understand, probably you stay away from the Z-Pack. But that's an antibiotic. It can clean out the lungs. The lungs are a point of attack for this horrible virus.
That was Donald Trump over the weekend, making us question the health of his own lungs, considering the breathy nature of that statement. He was further pushing the idea that hydroxychloroquine would be a safe and effective treatment for COVID-19, even though there is a lack of scientific data to back up his claims. And this is really damaging misinformation that he continues to spread. And luckily, there are some health experts who are trying to correct the record and let the public know about what's going on, namely Dr. Anthony Fauci. We're going to go to him in just a second. But Cenk, thoughts?
Yeah, oh yeah, I got thoughts. So, first of all, I couldn't agree more with the breathy delivery. Like, what is, like, does he have like a side hustle of reading like the world's worst erotic novels? And then they went on a romantic interlude.
Try it.
To Norway. That's where he took her. Okay, anyway. So in this case, there's sun doesn't smell right. Sun doesn't smell right. Okay, so he's been pushing this drug way too hard. In the beginning, I thought it was the usual ego. Like, once he said it once, oh yeah, I'm going to double down and triple down. And then once you find out that it saved one life, I'm going to declare victory and declare myself the smartest person that ever lived. It's a very Trumpian thing to do. So I figured that was it. But now he's pushed it way too many times and way too insistently. Follow the money. There's something going on here.
Right. So I do want to give some details about one of the pharmaceutical companies that actually spent quite a bit of money to get direct access to Trump. And oh, would you look at that? Novartis, which is the pharmaceutical company I'm talking about, does produce this drug that Donald Trump has been touting. But before we get to those details, I do think it's important to hear from Dr. Anthony Fauci because he is forced to give similar statements over and over again because Donald Trump keeps misinforming the public about the effectiveness of this drug over and over again. Let's take a look at the next video.
Is hydrochloroquine preventative against this virus? Yes or no?
You know, as I've said many times, Margaret, the data are really just at best suggestive. There have been cases that show there may be an effect, and there are others to show there's no effect.
So he's very clear about it. And Cenk, like, what's incredible is during the press conferences, he does his best to correct whatever Trump is misinforming the public about. But just recently, over the weekend, during one of these COVID-19 pressers, a reporter wanted more clarity on the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine. And just check out how Trump handled this moment.
You also weigh in on this issue of hydroxychloroquine. What do you think about this, and what is the medical evidence?
That question?
Yeah. Well, I'd
Maybe
love to hear
15,
from the doctor.
15 times. You don't have to ask.
He's your medical expert, correct?
He's answered that question 15 times.
Dr. Fauci. It's just what a disaster, really.
So Fauci once said, look, I can't press him down in the middle of a press conference and correct him every time. And as our senior producer, Jerry Jackson, pointed out this morning, that's exactly what Trump just did to Fauci. He stepped up like a bully and was like, no, he's not answering that question. There's something super fishy here. Look, I want to tell folks what the reality is. When you have tests without controls, as are the ones that happen in regards to this drug in China and France, without a control study, it means almost nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that the medicine won't work at the end. We just don't know. All it means is we don't know. If Trump says afterward, let's say that they do it, they have control groups, they do the studies right, and it turns out that it works, then Trump will declare victory, but that won't be true because he had no idea, right? Right now, none of us have any idea if it works. It's possible that it works, but doctors cannot go off of maybe. You guys should start taking it because maybe. And remember, it has very significant potential side effects. So do not take it lightly. Definitely ask your doctor. And whatever you do in a situation like this, don't listen to Trump. I know he has a cult and they won't listen to us and they'll just start like big gulping the thing. But you're going to do it at your own peril. It's two people died taking something that they thought was a drug, wasn't, or one person died and the other one, and his wife was extremely sick. But even if you take the and you're preventing it from people who actually need it for other illnesses that it actually does treat.
Yes, including, I mean, it's an anti-malaria drug, but it's also something that's used by lupus patients. And so lupus patients have had an incredibly difficult time filling their prescriptions, and they clearly need this drug to survive. It's the proven drug to keep them alive, right? So on one hand, the misinformation is depriving people who actually need this drug for proven purposes from getting their hands on it. And on the other hand, it's risky in that the FDA has not approved this drug specifically to combat COVID-19. That's another piece of misinformation that you're likely to hear from some of these pressers that Trump does. He keeps saying that the FDA has approved it for COVID-19. That is not the case. But I do want to go back to Novartis, which is the pharmaceutical company, at least one of the pharmaceutical companies that produces hydroxychloroquine. And we found that, and by the way, this is based on Michael Cohen's own testimony, that the executives over at Novartis wanted to have a direct line of contact with Donald Trump. So back in 2017, they actually contributed quite a bit of money to Trump. According to Law and Crime, one of the largest manufacturers of the drug, Novartis, previously paid Trump's now incarcerated former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, more than $1 million for healthcare policy insight following Trump's election in 2016. The Swiss drug maker signed a contract that paid Cohen's newly formed limited liability corporation, Essential Consultants, $100,000 per month in February of 2017. After details of the deal were leaked, the company's CEO issued an apology saying Novartis, quote, made a mistake in contracting with the president's personal attorney. And then update to Novartis's actions, they apparently agreed to donate up to 130 million doses of this unproven drug to help fight COVID-19. So, I mean, look, it's being represented as a donation. I'm very curious whether any journalist with the resources is going to do an investigation into this, because something seems incredibly fishy. Why is it that Donald Trump is so gung-ho about promoting this drug for a purpose that it hasn't been proven for yet?
And by the way, it's not just that he's doing hype for it and marketing for it on almost a daily basis, not just going beyond what the doctors and scientists are saying about it, but the government is also ordering a ton of it. So he has the direct ability to purchase this drug. So in a sense. So look, here are the things that are clear. Novartis didn't pay $1 million to Trump's attorney because they needed his healthcare advice. They were willing to pay $1 million to get a meeting with Donald Trump. Now, what does that mean? That means they had a very specific ask in mind, and that ask was going to make them a lot more than $1 million. A lot more. So that's why, like, on an off chance that his lawyer could hook them up, they threw away $1 million to get a meeting. So whatever Novartis wanted of Trump, it was a significant request. Did they eventually have the meeting with Trump? Did they eventually figure out that bribery in America is actually legal if you do it the right way, and you just give him a campaign donation, then he'll give you whatever you want? I don't know. You'll have to look into that and see what kind of donations that Novartis has made to super PACs, et cetera. But this is what we need good reporters from. Instead of reporters that just sit around bashing Bernie Sanders all day, why don't you actually work for a living and find out if there's a connection between Novartis and Trump, if they ever had a meeting, if Novartis ever asked for anything publicly, privately, et cetera, because the amount of times that Trump is hyping them is out of this earth. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And he's literally, you saw it right there with your own eyes, suppressing his own doctor and his expert, own doctor as in the doctor that he trusts to give him advice about coronavirus for the public, putting and literally muzzles him, won't let him talk, and comes out and says, no, you got to try this thing. And he once hyped it up on Twitter as one of like the greatest things that might have ever happened in the history of medicine. Man, this sounds like a Trump project.
Well, I do want to move on to one other angle to this story. So I'm going to reset for this next video, Brett. So during Donald Trump's presser on COVID-19 over the weekend, he was encouraging people to try hydroxychloroquine, even though there is very little scientific data indicating that it would actually be an effective way or a safe way in treating coronavirus. And one of the things that he said was, well, you have nothing to lose. Well, Dr. Patrice Harris was being interviewed and was asked about Trump's statements, and she actually mentions there's quite a bit to lose. She's the president of the American Medical Association. Watch.
So when the president says, what do you have to lose? You got coronavirus, you're in the hospital, what do you have to lose? What do you say?
You could lose your life. It's unproven. And so certainly there are some limited studies, as Dr. Fauci said, but at this point, we just don't have the data to suggest that we should be using this medication for COVID-19.
So that is the view of actual medical experts who are concerned about people who might take this drug because they've been encouraged to by Donald Trump, who is not a medical expert. He also doubled down on a lie that he's told before during these pressers. He said, quote, as you know, they've approved it, meaning the FDA. They gave it rapid approval. Well, the truth is the FDA merely issued a limited emergency use authorization to distribute the drug from the national stockpile and explicitly stated that, quote, chloroquine phosphate and hydroxychloroquine sulfate are not FDA approved for treatment of COVID-19. Like, the FDA has to come out and correct Donald Trump's lies. It's incredible.
Okay, so first of all, a president telling you that a drug is FDA approved when it is not in the middle of a pandemic is potentially criminal negligence. That it's unbelievable that the president would say that. And if any other president had done it, everybody would be flipping out, because every other president is not mental and doesn't make 1,000 mistakes, say 1,000 lies, and do 1,000 outrageous things every single day. But this is among them. Do not say a drug is FDA approved when it is not, because then people will take it and there could be consequences. So what are the potential consequences? So let me read from Dr. Megan Rennie's explanation of potential side effects. Doesn't mean that everybody who takes the drug is going to get these side effects, but this is a possibility for some people. That's why you should be careful. So here they are. This medication has major side effects, including paranoia, hallucinations, suicidal thoughts, suppression of your blood counts so that you become more susceptible to infections. It can cause severe cardiac arrhythmias. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. That can even cause death. They are not common side effects, but they are common enough that this should not be taken willy-nilly. It's not like water. It is not harmless, and it may have major side effects. So this is real. You don't go around taking very significant medicine that is not prescribed by your doctor or approved by the FDA. Do not listen to the con man in charge. He usually has some ulterior motive, and he most certainly does not know what he's talking about.
Well, if you thought it would be weird to receive medical advice from a failed businessman like Donald Trump, wait till you come back from our break when we talk about his trade advisor giving us some medical advice when it comes to treating COVID-19. We have that story and more for you when we return.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a... Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
When you choose Aspiration, you can also trust that your hard-earned money is deposited into a financial firm with a conscience. You're sending a message for change and saving yourself more than just a couple bucks along the way. With the Aspiration Spend and Save account, you'll actually pay no monthly fees. Aspiration also commits to donating 10% of every dollar of its earnings to charitable microloans for low-income Americans. And as a thank you, when you sign up with Aspiration, we'll give you a free month of TYT membership. Head to aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion. Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
When you sign up for NordVPN, you'll take control of your internet experience while helping support us here at TYT. NordVPN allows up to 6 connections at once and no data limits, so you can get all the content you want on any device. For a limited time, go to nordvpn.com/TYT or use the coupon TYT to get a 3-year plan for 70% off plus 1 extra month free.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but all of you guys with us because you are the Young Turks. That gives me, well, let's talk about Brett, okay? I don't mean Brett Ehrlich, but I mean Brett who just participated in tyt.com/go. So he's a viewer, and he told us how he got involved. But first, let me tell you, he gave $300, so he's awesome. Love him. Thank you, Brett. He says that I should actually thank his wife, Heather, who started watching the Young Turks while helping on the 2016 Bernie campaign and got him hooked on it. I love his story because he said, I started watching YouTube videos first, but he made a big point about saying that does not do justice to the show. The show is so much more fun when you watch it live. He says even the breaks are fun and give you background on the host and the people that work at TYT. And he says, now I think that I could give you a paragraph about every single on-air personality of TYT, etc. He's like, look, it's the TYT family, and I love it. So so he chipped in $300, which is significant. So Brett, Heather, we love you guys. Thanks for doing that. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go. because we're hurt, dog. Don't ask us if we're all right. Yes, no question, the coronavirus situation has hurt our already fairly precarious situation here, and we're definitely trying to make sure that we stay on for you guys. So tyt.com/go. All right, thank you, Brad. Real quick, there's a lot of wonderful, interesting things that people wrote in, but I want to read at least two that are references to what is going on right now in different parts of the country. So YouTube super chat, Debbie the Bernie Bro says, lupus patient, I'm on it, and I can't get my prescription filled because they don't have enough. So it's devastating already because Trump is hyping this one medicine up that is not necessary, that is not even approved for treating coronavirus. Now real patients are running it. There's a second story about that, but real quick, Dylan C. Diggle also used YouTube Super Chat to say, here today, see Jenks reasoning behind embracing #dropout Bernie. I just got done calling all Sanders offices to encourage him to stay in and Warren offices asking to endorse because I fear Joe will lose. Okay, I'm not in favor of dropout Bernie. Look, my tweets are hard to contain ideas in quick ways. So let's go to the post game, and I'll tell you what my real opinion is and my real views. It's important. So the post game is the last half hour here, which you'll get obviously in about an hour. So that's tyt. Or you'll start to get it in half an hour. Anyway, tyt.com/join to become a member to get the post game, where I can tell you all about that. And the last one is from Twitter, and I just want to give you guys a voice here because. Not that Donald writes in, I have lupus and brand name Plaquenil has serious side effects, including permanent vision damage, dizziness, and gastrointestinal issues, and suicidal thoughts, and EKG issues, to name a few. Now that's his experience. We're not doctors or scientists. Please check with your doctors if you need to take this medicine and find out if you need to take it. Make sure you talk to your doctor.
All right. Well, we're not done with this story yet. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about Trump's economic advisors trying to play the role of medical experts. So there's an ongoing war within the Trump administration regarding the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine. It's a drug that lupus patients take. It's a drug that malaria patients take. There isn't a lot of scientific data indicating that it's effective for treating individuals with COVID-19, but Trump keeps claiming that it is effective and that it's supposedly approved by the FDA for use for treatment for COVID-19. That is another lie that Donald Trump is saying. Well, now we're finding that Anthony Fauci has to deal with the likes of Peter Navarro within Trump's administration. Now, if you don't know who Peter Navarro is, just understand that he is not a medical expert. He is not a doctor, but he is Donald Trump's trade advisor. And so apparently he blew up on Anthony Fauci in the Situation Room, according to reporting from CNN. There was a heated disagreement in the Situation Room over the efficacy of the anti-malaria drug, hydroxychloroquine, as President Trump's top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, feuded with other officials over the drug's unproven effectiveness to treat coronavirus. In fact, according to CNN's reporting, Navarro lashed out at Dr. Anthony Fauci, one of the advisors who had urged caution about the drug. And apparently Navarro showed up with paperwork indicating that the drug is effective, but the paperwork that he showed up with was not scientific data. And so Fauci basically told him, like, yo, homeboy, like, I like your papers and everything, but it doesn't mean anything because they're not scientific studies. It's not scientific data. We can't speak to the efficacy of this drug to treat coronavirus because of that reason. Now, Navarro was interviewed by John Berman on CNN over the weekend, and things got a little fiery. Let's take a look.
Doctors disagree about things all the time. My qualifications in terms of looking at the science is that I'm a social scientist. I have a PhD, and I understand how to read statistical studies, whether it's in medicine, the law, economics, or whatever.
I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify you to treat patients. You know it doesn't qualify you to treat patients.
John. All I'm asking for you to understand, John, is that right in your city, in the New York Health and Hospital System, virtually every patient getting COVID is presenting with COVID-19 symptoms is given hydroxy. Now, you talk to Mitch Katz, talk to William Grace, and I simply present that. And I think this is important for your viewers.
Okay.
What?
So I want to congratulate all the folks out there that have a Bachelor of Science, because you just became scientists.
We're all doctors.
So congrats. Now, look, I'm actually going to defend Navarro a tiny bit before I go back to kicking his ass. So you don't need, to be fair to him, he didn't ask to treat patients. So when John Berman says, because you have a PhD doesn't mean you can treat patients, which, by the way, you might want to tell Whoopi Goldberg about Dr. Jill Biden. Anyway, but just keeping it real, that also happened. But Navarro is saying, look, I can analyze the studies just as well as anyone, and that's true. I can analyze the study. I don't need to be a doctor to analyze the study. Having said that, he apparently did not do a very good job of analyzing the study, because he plops down all these papers on the desk, but the papers aren't scientific studies, so it doesn't matter. It reminds me of the old days when Rush Limbaugh on the radio would just like snap a piece of paper in front of the microphone and say, I have a fax, ladies and gentlemen. I have a fax. Okay.
Right.
And I don't know what that, like, your mom could have faxed you the menu for, lunch. I don't know what the hell. What, that would be a weird thing to fax too. But anyway, just because you have papers doesn't mean a goddamn thing. So who's right between Fauci and Navarro on the science? Is this an open question? Of course, Fauci. Clownorama's trying to make Trump happy over here, because Trump, for whatever reason, wants to push the drug. Navarro is a hatchet man for Trump. So basically, he was sent in there, it looks like to me, this is my analysis, to try to intimidate Fauci and everyone else in the room. If you don't push what Trump is pushing, I'm going to push you around. He's going to send a thug like me to regulate.
No, I mean, it's ridiculous. And no, Navarro doesn't deserve any type of defense, because in, referencing his education, he's trying to make himself out to be some sort of authoritative figure when it comes to promoting this drug for use that it's not meant for. Right. So I think that it's, especially when it comes to life and death situations, and when it comes to potentially taking certain drugs for an illness or this particular virus, clarity and consistency is important. And what Navarro is doing is he's helping Donald Trump in muddying the waters when it comes to an incredibly dangerous drug that, again, is not approved for treating COVID-19. Now, I want a good treatment for it more than anyone, just as much as anyone, right? But what we don't want to do is encourage people to use this drug off-label to treat something when there isn't enough scientific data indicating that it could actually treat it without lethal side effects. With that said, though, I do want to go to the next clip, because the interview just continued getting pretty fiery.
I mean, when I look at a study, just this latest one, I read it from Wuhan, and there's a control group where 80% do well and only 50% don't. I mean, you could be a plumber and read that and come to the same conclusion, John.
Peter,
I don't know why you're so hard about this.
I'm not.
Would you take it? Would you take it if you got sick?
Would I take it if I got sick?
Yeah. Would you take it, knowing what you know now?
No, I would listen to my doctor about whether or not I should take it if I got sick. I would consult my doctor. I would not consult someone involved with trade policy. I would not consult with someone with trade policy, Peter.
I agree.
And my question, do you want a doctor? Do you want a medical doctor, an internist? Do you want an internist striking trade deals with Asian countries? Well, no, but that's my point.
But you're setting up a false narrative
here. I'm not.
Here.
I swear to God, I'm not. You had a debate inside the Situation Room with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, the man who was in charge, to a certain extent, of the nation's medical response to this. And all he said, he wants this to work. Everyone wants this to work. All he has said is, let's let the testing and the science decide. What you seem to be saying is, I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I've decided.
That's so unfair, John.
I don't think that it is unfair. I think John Berman actually handled that interview perfectly and had the right pushback to Navarro's misinformation.
Yeah. For the folks who are used to normal news, they were like, I don't get it. You guys are really backing John Berman here. And I've heard you guys criticize him before. Yeah, that's because he was wrong before and he's right about this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how non-biased people work. So no, that was a great follow-up. That was exactly the right question. And Navarro had no good answer other than, oh, boo-hoo, me, you're being unfair. No, he described it exactly as it was. So look, Navarro is very unlikely to go into that task force meeting, which, by the way, he's not part of the task force. So he got put into that room for whatever reason at some point. And he's unlikely to go in there rogue. My guess is somebody sent him in there to yell at Fauci and others to send a message. Because what the hell's the trade advisor in that room for in the first place? And if he is, it should be regarding trade. And for him to bully the scientists and the doctors in the room, that means very likely he was sent in to bully them. So for God's sake, again, if there's a single good reporter in the country, follow the money. Follow the money. There's something unnaturally fishy about how much Trump and his thugs are hyping this one particular medicine that is not FDA approved, and that people should not be taking without consulting with their doctors.
Well, let's move away from drug talk and discuss some of the decisions that Donald Trump has made, because he's made a lot of bad ones, including his refusal to push for a stay-at-home order. So Donald Trump still has not pulled the trigger on a nationwide stay-at-home order, which is incredibly important because still, till this day, there are as many as 9 states that have refused to also do the same, to encourage their citizens to stay home, to shelter in place in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Now, Chris Wallace wants to know why. And I give Chris Wallace a lot of credit because he is conservative, but he doesn't hold back from being critical toward the Trump administration. He was critical throughout the Russia investigation. He was critical throughout the impeachment investigation. And he's certainly critical now with Trump's handling of COVID-19. So he had the Surgeon General on to discuss this, Surgeon General Jerome Adams. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Dr. Fauci says he believes that there should be a national stay-at-home order. Is he wrong?
Well, Chris, it's important to understand that most people across the country are doing the right thing. Over 90% of the country is staying at home, and a good proportion, more than average, are staying home even in those 9 states. But the last time you and I talked, it was about opioids. People don't know, but I've run a state Department of Health. I've been involved in health for years, and diseases don't respect state lines, but we live in a country where we have a system of federalism. And when it comes to opioids, states have different rules and regulations and laws regarding treatment, regarding syringe service programs, as you and I have talked about. I actually put out a report on tobacco cessation earlier this year, and we know that states have different laws there, and more people will die, even in the worst projections, from cigarette smoking in this country than are going to die from coronavirus this year.
That was not a good answer, if you ask me. There are some distinctions among the health professionals and health experts within Trump's COVID-19 task force. I feel like the Surgeon General is more willing to maybe be apologetic for or cover up for Trump's misinformation, for his terrible decisions. But this is not about regulations pertaining to opioid use or opioid treatment. This is about a situation where we're all living in the same country together. This virus spreads rapidly, and we're all in it together. So you can't have some states do the right thing, other states do the wrong thing, which is not encourage their residents to stay at home, and think that this virus is going to be, effectively combated. It's so easy to spread it, and each state isn't an individual island. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would think that argument is legitimate in any way.
Yeah. So it's to me, it seems fairly clear he actually does not agree with the decision, but they're all put in this incredibly awkward and difficult situation where they have to justify Trump's stupid decisions. So he has the authority to do a stay-at-home order. Even rhetorically, saying it would make a big difference, and that's why Dr. Fauci says that he should say that. Trump should say that, but he won't. So then the Surgeon General has to go out there and go, well, smoking kills more people. That's true, but really has nothing to do with this. We'll get back to that in a second. But there are 9 states now that have not done a stay-at-home order. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. They have different varying degrees of response to this. So a lot of the schools are closed, and they have policies like safer at home, which is like, hey, we really wish you'd stay at home, but we're not telling you it's absolutely necessary. But the ones that drive me crazy are Alabama, South Dakota, and Nebraska, with governors going, this ain't New York. Okay. On the one hand, I understand part of what they're driving at, which is in a rural situation, people are not as compact. On the other hand, there seems to be a stupid swagger to those statements within the context of them saying it that makes it sound like we're tougher than you guys are in New York, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, so I'm going to do just a quick rundown of some of these states and the reasoning that we've heard from the governors. So, for instance, in Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson has repeatedly defended his decision not to issue a stay-at-home order, suggesting that such a measure would cause loss of jobs. Yeah, but what about the loss of lives? I mean, that's what you should be concerned about. I mean, yes, we're all worried about loss of jobs. We're all concerned about the incredibly high unemployment rate right now, but we need to save people's lives. And the best way to, in the long run, improve the economy is to ensure that we combat this virus as quickly as possible. The longer they hold out on doing the right thing, the longer it's going to take for us to, really combat this virus effectively. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds insists that a statewide stay-at-home order is unnecessary. Reynolds has previously suggested that the measure already implemented by the state are equivalent to an informal stay-at-home order. So just as you were referring to, Cenk, some governors don't have like a mandatory shelter-in-place order, but they have some guidelines that indicate that you should stay at home. But really, you need to convey a strong message to your constituents so they understand the severity of the situation, because I don't think it's getting through to a lot of people who live in these states. Same with Nebraska. Governor Pete Ricketts reiterated on Thursday that he does not believe a statewide stay-at-home order is necessary yet. And in Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt has called a statewide stay-at-home order unrealistic, reiterating individual personal responsibility and the need for social distancing. South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming are also states that have refused to do a statewide stay-at-home order.
Well, this whole thing about like individual responsibility makes it sound like freedom. It isn't about that at all, of course. It's about money, big businesses that donate to politicians. And so the reason they're not doing stay-at-home orders is not because they don't think it's medically necessary or they think that they're striking the right balance. It's because if you do stay at home, all non-essential businesses close, and they don't want those businesses to close. I'd be curious to see how much of how many of the CEOs are going into work themselves. Maybe some of them, maybe all of them, right? But the CEOs are generally in New York and other places, and forcing their workers to go into work in all those states, by the way, all red states, is really the objective here, right? Hey, we got to keep it humming along, so back to the mines.
Yeah, and I want to just quickly comment on employees who are considered essential employees and they are going to work. Some of these Amazon employees, for instance, one Amazon employee just got fired because he was encouraging the company, pressuring the company to provide protective gear, which they obviously need, right? I mean, these people are freaking heroes, because without them, we wouldn't have access to things that, a lot of people need, food, supplies, while they're forced to stay at home. And the very least that Amazon an incredibly profitable company can do is ensure that their employees are safe and that they have the protective gear that they need. But instead, they decided to fire the employee who was basically mobilizing his colleagues to fight back and get something done so they are protected. It's pathetic.
How Trumpian of them. Trump, of course, his administration at least, and it sounds like him, we'll get to the story a little bit later, had Captain Crozier removed from his ship because he told a story of how the guys are sick, we need to protect the sailors' lives. And so in the Amazon case, you're in an enclosed warehouse. And how is it good for your business anyway? It's short-term greed. If all your workers get sick, and if one of them is sick, there's an excellent chance that they'll all get sick because it's airborne. It's airborne. How does it help your business? It doesn't. It's short-term greed, 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 greed. Same thing with these 9 red states that are not calling for a stay-at-home order. It's short-term greed. But when half your state gets sick, it's not going to help business either.
Exactly. All right. Well, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, though, we'll update you on the Captain Crozier story. There are some pretty big updates to that, and we'll have more for you. We'll be right back.
Can you name the representative of your district?
The representative of my district? Oof.
I have no idea.
I actually don't know who the representative of my district is.
Do you know what the corporate tax rate is?
I think it's pretty high. I should know this.
Like in between 20 and 25%. I don't know.
How many amendments are in the U.S. Constitution?
Oh, no.
This brings me back to grade school.
I should know this because I was a history major, but I do not remember.
I don't know that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
Nope. I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know? I didn't know. It's time to change that. We live in the best country in the world. We live in the most powerful country in the world. We love our American freedom, but only half of us take part in the political process. Only half of us vote. We don't fulfill our duties as U.S. citizens to make this country a better place. It's time that we use our voices as a team, as a country, to become better. We will stand up. We will be empowered. We will stay educated and informed about politics every single day because it's our responsibility. And Politiscope just made it easy for you. So join me, join us, and let's be Americans.
The TYT affiliate program's finally here. Now you think, finally, I didn't know about it, but I did. I've been waiting to do this for a long, long time. Why? Because it's the best win-win we got. When we make money, you make money. When you make money, we make money. Hey, that's how we're supposed to do it as progressives. We're supposed to do it together. So this way, we're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. How many times have I told you that? And now in this case, that actually even applies to us selling membership together. Now look, another part of the win is that you get to spread the message about the progressive point of view. And that's awesome. So we're doing good in the world, but on top of that, you get commission on it. So all you gotta do is set up your free account. Once you complete that easy process, you receive your free personalized link, and then you start sharing that with everybody, and then voila, you're in the ball game. Look guys, I'd ask you to do this anyway because it's important to spread the message and it's important to keep the lights on to support independent media and the home of progressives. But in this case, I think it's even better because then we get to grow together, and you know, every little bit helps, not just for us, but for you guys. So if this could be a nice way to get a little bit extra cash while doing something wonderful in the world, well, I love that. So that's why we thought of this, and we hope that you participate. And I'm really, really psyched about it. Let's do this together.
The
Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump can use military funds to build his border wall.
That I saw in their mouths.
I believe that. To acquit Donald Trump.
2020 is endgame. Everything. If progressives win, we're done apologizing. They should apologize to us for all that they have done to us 1,000 times over.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Let me read a couple of comments for you guys. Theater Goddess writes in the member section, because of the COVID-19 stimulus, I'll likely be in a position to donate a good amount of money to the GO campaign, and this is an opportunity that I'm not sure I'll have again. Even though you haven't posted any naming rights levels, how much would it cost to get the God mic in the control room named a Theater Goddess or Goddess mic for short? So I love that. I don't know the answer. I'll get it to you. But for folks who gave a good amount of money, when we do a donor wall, and in fact, my whiteboard just arrived, and I'm going to start putting up your names there. We will do everything retroactively as well. If we give away T-shirts, we'll give away T-shirts to you guys, naming rights, etc. So don't worry about that. tyt.com/go now. And then we'll do that for the folks who already gave as well. So let's take a look at it real quick to see where we are. We started at about 68,000 earlier today, and now we are at 69,235. Let's keep it going. Let's see if we can get to 70 or more by the end. That would be amazing. Now, a lot of folks wrote in comments like this. Irene says, as a physician, I can tell you that in medicine, Navarro's credentials mean nothing.
Yes.
Chance writes in, Navarro looks like the Riddler on Adam West's Batman TV shows. Another good point.
God damn it, I love you guys.
I know, totally. Toronto Peter gets in my grill a little bit, as did several folks on Twitter, so I'll summarize all of them with Toronto Peter's comment in the member section. He says, no offense, Cenk, but you cannot understand a clinical study properly. I don't care if you have a PhD or a JD. If it isn't science or medicine, sorry, you won't understand it. I am a scientist. To understand clinical trials or any medical study, you require knowledge of specific vocabulary terms, experimental designs, etc. You nor Peter Navarro has that knowledge.
Listen, I will say, as someone who has a master's of science, I completely agree with you, and I do not know how to decipher scientific studies, and nor will I pretend to be an authoritative figure in that regard. No one should, unless you have actual training and expertise.
Well, I counter with this. So first off, no one understands clinical studies better than I do. Second of all, I do have a JD, which is only one letter off from an MD. Boom.
Have you ever used Esquire in your name?
Not unless I wanted someone to think I was how do I clean this up? A jerk?
No, don't. I'm sure there are some Esquires watching right now. No judgment, do you, boo? You earned that degree, okay? You earned it.
I hear you, but if I went and said to somebody, hi, Cenk Huger Esquire. I mean, if Ben was around, I've never seen him punch anyone, but he might punch me. All right. Let's keep going. We got a lot of important stories.
Let's do it.
I thought it was terrible what he did. To write a letter? I mean, this isn't a class on literature. He shouldn't be talking that way in a letter. He could call and ask and suggest.
Trump had absolutely no problem bad-mouthing the Navy captain who was relieved of duty after he sounded the alarm regarding a COVID-19 outbreak on an aircraft carrier that he was in charge of. Now, multiple sailors who were on that ship have tested positive for COVID-19, and it turns out that Navy Captain Brett Crozier, who is the person that Trump was talking about in that clip, unfortunately also tested positive for COVID-19. In fact, the commander began exhibiting symptoms before he was removed from the warship, two of his classmates said. Crozier was fired following a leak to the San Francisco Chronicle of a letter he had emailed to Navy leaders that detailed the failures on the service's part to provide the necessary resources to swiftly move sailors off the carrier and disinfect areas on board as the virus spread through the ship. Now, his concerns were clearly legitimate, but the Trump administration must have been embarrassed by this letter after it was leaked to the San Francisco Chronicle. They were more concerned about their image as opposed to the well-being of sailors on that aircraft carrier. Now, what's also interesting is that the Navy secretary had some pretty strong words about Brett Crozier during a speech that he gave to these sailors. We're going to give you two different snippets of that speech so you get a sense of what he had to say about Crozier, but pay particular attention to how the sailors responded or reacted to what the Navy secretary had to say here.
Immediately it was picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle, which published sensitive information about the material condition of a naval warship. If he didn't think, it was my opinion, that if he didn't think that information was going to get out into the public in this information age that we live in, then he was A, too naive or too stupid to be the commanding officer of a ship like this. What the? The alternate is that he did it on purpose. And that's a serious violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which you are all familiar with. That message and all the contents in that message was perfectly fine for him to send to people in his chain of command in a confidential way so they could get acting on it.
The reaction from sailors was pretty incredible. And if you can recall, when Crozier was taken off the aircraft carrier, the sailors were chanting his name. It was clear that they had a lot of affection for him.
Yeah. So first of all, throughout the weekend, every once in a while, I'd start chanting, Captain Crozier, Captain Crozier. That was one of my favorite videos of all time. It's the end of Dead Poets Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Literal, right? So now, in this case, you see one of the sailors with an F-bomb as the Navy secretary is talking to them about their captain, and they don't want to hear any of that. They love their captain because he was trying to protect their lives. I read the letter that Captain Crozier wrote, and first thing is, he made such a devastating point about the situation on the ship, and that's why they're embarrassed. And I'll get to who's at fault in a second. But he said the only study that's ever been done on an enclosed ship is on the Diamond Princess cruise ship that had a lot of the coronavirus outbreak on it. And they explained that they did mitigation on the ship. If they had done immediate mitigation, only 79 people would have gotten sick out of thousands and thousands. But because they couldn't do that, they did do some mitigation because they have individual rooms on the ship. And so they sequestered in that way. And still, 17% of the ship got coronavirus. But the most important part of the study was, if they did not do that mitigation, 79% of the people on the ship would have gotten coronavirus. And Captain Crozier explained, guys, in our case, we don't have individual compartments. We all live together. We go to the same restrooms. We have the same cook cooking this food for everybody. This is the worst case scenario. If we do not do something, we're likely to have 79% of these sailors get coronavirus, and a lot of them die. And he said, if it was in wartime, we'll do what we need to do. We'll obviously carry on sick, etc. But we're not at wartime. So why are we going to lose sailors for no reason at all? Which leads me to who got pissed. It was either the person right above him, all the way up to the Navy secretary in the chain of command, who was like, I already told you no, have your sailors die. Why are you going above my head? That's possibility number one. That's why on the first day I wasn't sure that it was Trump who did it. Of course, the second possibility is that it's Trump because it embarrassed him politically. But now we likely have our answer, because when Trump comes out and says it was a terrible thing he did, terrible, and he says, no, I didn't make the decision, but but I support it. 9 out of 10 times that means he made the decision. When he says I didn't make the decision, that means almost certainly he did, and he thinks that there's going to be political blowback from it. And now he has all of his thugs online trying to, talk down Captain Crozier as if he's some sort of villain, which is insanity. I don't know how many lives he saved on that ship, but that's why his sailors love him, and he did exactly what a captain's supposed to do.
So Thomas Modly, who's the Navy secretary, in that clip that we just had you all listen to, basically said that Crozier is either naive or stupid if he thought that that letter wouldn't eventually get leaked. And I just thought that was a fascinating thing to say, because keep in mind that Modly made these statements to these sailors without intending for these statements to be made public in any way. And so is he naive or is he stupid in bad mouthing the Navy captain who just wanted to save people's lives and ensure that the sailors were safe, ensure that they don't end up dying from an incredibly lethal virus that, by the way, has already claimed the lives of over 10,000 Americans. So Crozier look, it might have embarrassed people up the chain of command. It might have embarrassed Trump. But I really do think it's the right thing to do if you think that's your final option, your only option to get something done to protect these sailors. But at the same time, I mean, you have Modly, calling Crozier stupid. What do you think he's stupid for? Because he, did a cost benefit analysis and understood that maybe embarrassing people means less than protecting the lives of our sailors.
100%. And by the way, it looks like now, coincidentally, one of the lives he saved might have been his own. So maybe the best thing they could have done for him is take him off that ship. But when we have a real president back in charge, give him the ship back.
All right. Well, post-game show is next. We'll see you all later.
All right, welcome back to the post game. Lots of stories for you guys. Some of these stories only you guys get. All of them you get at first, obviously, as members. So, Anna, we got breaking news in Wisconsin.
Yes. All right. So Wisconsin was set to hold its elections on April 7th, tomorrow. And it turned out that the Democratic governor, Tony Evers, decided to call an executive order in order to postpone the elections for obvious reasons. People are supposed to be staying home. The idea of doing in-person voting is incredibly dangerous. And I want to be clear about something. Initially, there was some indication that Governor Evers, as a Democrat, was still in favor of holding these elections in the middle of this pandemic. But it's actually become more and more clear that the Republican lawmakers in the state are the ones who have been pushing for, very aggressively pushing for, the elections to continue. So he decided, you know what? No, I'm going to pull an executive order here. This is unsafe. I need to look out for the safety of our constituents. And then the Republicans actually appealed the decision to the state's Supreme Court. And the big breaking part of this story today is that the Supreme Court in the state has decided that they will still hold the in-person elections in Wisconsin tomorrow. Basically, risking the lives of people who end up voting in person. But let's keep it real. Many are going to be disenfranchised. They're not going to want to show up. They're not going to want to risk contracting a lethal virus in order to cast ballots.
So let's be clear about who's responsible here. And if anyone dies, that responsibility might be relevant, might be legally relevant. So now Tony Evers has acted, and it's clearly not on his shoulders. Before, I was concerned that at a minimum, he was being too soft in dealing with the Republicans. The Republicans don't want to delay the election, and oh, golly gee, there isn't much I could do, was what was coming out of Evers' office. Well, it turns out there was a lot he could do. He could do an executive order, and he did. So now it's definitely not on Tony Evers, and it's not on the Democrats. So the people responsible are Robin Vos. He is the Assembly Speaker in Wisconsin, and Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald. So Vos and Fitzgerald have decided, for their own political reasons, we're going to drive people to situations where they are clearly at risk, the risk of their lives. They're going to be in enclosed spaces. The virus is airborne. Earlier in the show, I quoted a study from the cruise ship Diamond Princess. If they had not done mitigation in that enclosed space, 79% of the people on the ship would have gotten coronavirus. It's airborne. And they're going to be packed next to one another. In Milwaukee, for example, there were going to be 180 polling stations. Now there's only 5. So they're going to be jam-packed. This is total insanity. Normally, at least even in depressed voter turnout in a situation like this, 500,000 people are supposed to vote in person. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. And then Evers acts, says executive order, I'm not going to let people get sick and I'm not going to let them die like this. And the Supreme Court says, yes, you will. So now the Supreme Court also has it on their hands. And it's funny, you know, it happens all the time. And this story just broke. But so we'll have to see the differences. But when a Republican governor in Ohio says, we're not having the election, I don't care what the courts say, they don't have the election. When a Democratic governor says we're not having the election, the courts come in and go, no, you are, shut up. So it's deeply frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. And just to be clear, it's not just the Supreme Court within the state that has made this decision. Previously, this did go through the federal courts, and a federal judge indicated that they couldn't postpone the election, that the governor didn't have the constitutional right to unilaterally postpone the election. So when he had issued that executive order, I was really curious to see how that would play out, given that a federal judge had weighed in on it the way that he had. But this is complete and utter insanity. And understand the reason why Republicans are so desperate to hold this vote is because they are dealing with a liberal challenger to one judge in the state Supreme Court. And they want to rush this through in a way where they know that certain people are not going to feel comfortable showing up to vote. So they'll have a better chance in the re-election of this particular conservative judge. That's my speculation. That's my read of what's going on.
It's not speculation. No, it's definite. No, there's no question about it. There's two main things that the Republicans care about in this election. One is that Supreme Court seat, and in that court seat also affects, and the reason why they care so much about it in particular is because they're planning to do voter suppression for the 2020 election in Wisconsin. And so if they don't have that seat, it'll be much harder to do voter suppression. They want to get rid of a bunch of voters that they think are more likely to vote Democratic. And if they pack the court with right-wingers, as they currently have, they think it'll be easy to do voter suppression and win our elections, but really, really importantly, also the presidential election, where Wisconsin is going to be super close. So the entire Republican Party is pressuring Wisconsin Republicans. Make sure you have that vote. We don't care who dies, because it's our job to make sure as little people as vote as possible. This is perfect. Now we're going to have voter suppression on a mass level where people are afraid to show up because they might lose their lives. They're like, that's perfect. And then it allows us to keep the court seat, which allows us to systematically do voter suppression. And the second thing that the Republicans are concerned about here is Democrats say, all right, but for God's sake, let's at least do mail-in ballots for a longer period of time so less people have to show up in person. I mean, at a bare minimum, that is mitigation, right? Some level of mitigation. And the Republicans say, hell no, no way. Less mail-in ballots, because then more people vote. We don't want more people voting. If more people vote, Republicans are unpopular. We have no chance of winning. The only way we win is suppressing votes and making sure we demonize certain groups of people and drive out our base. So they're absolutely brazen in this case. And the reality is this: if anyone dies because they contracted coronavirus voting in Wisconsin, I think Speaker Voss and Senator Fitzgerald should be arrested. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I don't think it's hyperbole. You made them go to the polls. Everyone at this late date. We're in April. Are you kidding me? You don't know the dangers of coronavirus? Don't pull a Brian Kemp later and be like, well, nobody knew that people who are asymptomatic could spread the disease. Oh my God, did you know it was airborne? Yes. Watch this video. In hindsight, you'll see. We knew. We all knew. We all knew 100%. They're sending people in there and God knows what's going to happen to them. And remember, they think, look, we got a big advantage here. Democrats listen to scientists, so they won't show up. Our voters are morons. We just tell them, you'll be fine. And who cares if they die? Just go and vote for me, my power. That's what matters. If people die, they should be arrested.
Well, let's move on to some of the retaliatory actions Trump has taken now that the impeachment investigation is over and everyone is distracted with COVID-19. So Donald Trump, always one to hold grudges, has fired the Inspector General for the intelligence community. This was a big breaking news story late last week. Michael Atkinson insisted on coming forward regarding the whistleblower complaint indicating that Donald Trump was attempting to coerce the Ukrainian government by holding up congressionally appropriated funds in return for a phony investigation into his political opponent, Joe Biden. Well, Trump's been holding on to that grudge, and now it turns out that he has decided to fire Atkinson. Trump made no effort at a news briefing to pretend that the dismissal was anything other than retribution for Atkinson's action under a law requiring such complaints to be disclosed to lawmakers. In fact, we have some video from that press conference. Let's take a quick look.
I thought he did a terrible job, absolutely terrible. He took a whistleblower report, which turned out to be a fake report. It was fake. It was totally wrong. It was about my conversation with the president of Ukraine. He took a fake report and he brought it to Congress with an emergency, okay? Not a big Trump fan, that I can tell you. Instead of saying, and we offered this to him, no, we will take the conversation where fortunately we had a transcript. If we didn't have a transcript with the kind of deception and dishonesty that were practiced by the Democrats, I might not be standing here right now, okay? Fortunately, we had a transcript, and it was a perfect transcript because even the lieutenant colonel admitted it was correct.
So Trump, yeah, go ahead, Cenk. This is just...
So look, if let's just play this game because it's necessary, because we've gotten, all of this has been normalized. If Obama had, if there was a whistleblower about something wrong that Obama did about Benghazi, and Obama had fired the inspector general that reported on the whistleblower exactly as he was supposed to by law, Republicans would have lost their minds. They would have thought it was the biggest scandal in American history. How could you possibly fire the inspector general that's reporting a whistleblower about your transgressions, about what you did wrong? You literally can't imagine anything more unethical. Oh, you were the cop trying to stop me? Well, you're fired, because I don't want a cop to stop me. I'm going to keep doing illegal things. But it's barely a blip. Now, I get that there's coronavirus, and I get that Trump has done 1,000 things wrong about coronavirus. So there's a lot to report. But it's unconscionable to fire the inspector general for doing exactly what his job is. And everybody and the band played on.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. Trump is so shameless and so brazen when it comes to his actions that I'm actually shocked that he waited this long to fire Atkinson. So, I mean, we all knew it was coming. And I think what's also interesting is like the way that our whole system is set up, in that the president is the person who appoints the inspector general who oversees the intelligence community, right? And then he gets confirmed by the Senate. But at the same time, that very role is supposed to be considered independent from the president. How is that supposed to work when the president gets to appoint that person, right? I mean, but it's incredible because even though Trump had the ability to do that, he didn't end up getting what he wanted, which was some rabid loyalist who doesn't believe in any oversight whatsoever. Understand that what Atkinson did here was simply his job. And what the Trump administration wanted, what Trump specifically wanted, was for Atkinson to bury that whistleblower and to bury that whistleblower report, because in his mind, it was a perfect call, which we now know, of course, it wasn't a perfect call. Even the summary of the call that Trump released was not perfect at all. And we still don't even know what that call entailed verbatim.
No, I'm not even having this conversation. It was the exact opposite of perfect. It implicated him very, 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 very clearly. He said, do me a favor, which was a political favor to attack Biden. His marketing and his over-the-top nonsense is maddening. And the fact that anyone gives it any credibility is maddening. So, look, the second terrible part of this precedent is that when he fires the inspector general for doing his job, and no one has alleged that the inspector did anything wrong. There's been no Republicans, no one who has said, oh, he violated the law. No, he did exactly what the law says. If you have a whistleblower, you're supposed to take that complaint. You're not supposed to share his name because you want to give a legitimate avenue for people to bring up problems so they don't have to leak classified information. So they want to put people in prison forever and ever. like Edward Snowden for leaking classified information, they say, oh, he should have been a whistleblower. So now Trump says, screw the whistleblowers. If they're blowing the whistle on me, I want to know who they are. I want them buried. And if you follow the law and you don't bury them, then I'm going to bury you and I'm going to fire you. So what does that tell every other inspector general? If you want to keep your job in any of these different branches, do not protect whistleblowers if they're whistleblowing on Donald Trump, because you will lose your job. And the second thing it tells whistleblowers is it's not going to work and you're likely going to be fired, because this administration is not interested in the truth, in you exposing something that's going wrong so they can fix it. They are the thing that's going wrong. So the criminals do not want to be exposed, and the criminals are in charge. That's exactly the message that Trump just sent.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, the Democratic primaries, because there have been multiple reports, one of which was in Politico regarding pressure for Bernie Sanders to drop out. And that pressure is coming from, allegedly, according to Politico's reporting, people who are really close to Trump, including Faz Shakir and Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie. My bad. I misspoke. The pressure is allegedly coming from some of the people who are closest to Bernie, including his campaign manager, Faz Shakir, and his longtime political advisor, Jeff Weaver. So, Cenk, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, first of all, I don't know if the political story is exactly right. But would I be surprised if there was a conversation internally about whether to drop out or not? No, of course not. Obviously, they're having that conversation, and obviously they should be having that conversation. So where do I come out on it? Honestly, in the beginning, I was more in the camp of it's over. And you heard me say it on the last primary night, March 17th. I think that there should have been a lot of different things that happened before March 17th, mainly the media coverage, and post March 17th, but it didn't happen. And he did get routed there. And until this coronavirus froze everything in place, it looked like there was really no hope. Now my opinion is changed a little bit. And so what I try to explain on Twitter, but maybe it didn't get through in the right way, is that under normal circumstances, yeah, Bernie would not have a path to the nomination. But these are not normal circumstances. So first of all, we got coronavirus. Now everybody's screaming from the rooftops that socialism is the answer. And they're all saying, oh my God, did you know that our life might be on the line and we might not even get tested, let alone treated, because we're under private insurance? Yeah, we all knew that. That's why we want Medicare for all. Did you know that some of us don't even have insurance? And that's why we might not even get treated for coronavirus. Our lives are on the line. Yeah, I know. We all know that. That's why Medicare for all is correct, no matter if your life is on the line for coronavirus or cancer. Now,
let me just jump in really quick, Cenk, just to buttress your point, because recent polling indicates that there's a significant uptick in support for Medicare for all because of COVID-19. Because remember, the big argument that we kept hearing over and over again was, well, people love their employer provided health care. They love it. They love it. Well, a bunch of people just got laid off. Millions of people just got laid off. Over 10 million, and the number is probably higher at this point. And so they just lost their employer provided health care. So I think people are experiencing in real time how important it is to actually fight for and implement the kinds of policies that Bernie has been a champion for.
That's right. But do you see that anywhere in the press? No.
No.
So no. Bernie's problem in mounting a comeback continues to be his arch nemesis, which is the over-the-top, biased, corrupt national media. So is anyone having a rational conversation about Medicare for all now when the whole country's screaming, free government health care? We need free government health care. And the polling indicates it's incredibly popular. Now, if you were a real reporter, you'd go, wow, that's really interesting. I mean, look at this. I mean, the guy championing Medicare for all is still in the race. Maybe that could be relevant. Nope, not a thing, not a thing. No, it's got to be Biden. Why isn't Bernie dropping out? Why isn't Bernie dropping out? Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, this is a small point at this point. It drives me crazy that it's a small point, but we have a very credible sexual assault allegation, not harassment, assault allegation against Joe Biden. But the media won't cover it. So they're just like, nope. Now, it'd be one thing if they had the same standard throughout. Oh, my God, this Kavanaugh allegation from high school days. No, we're not going to cover that. No. Al Franken joking in a picture, not touching the person. The person turns out to be a conservative talk show host who was part of a plot. Doesn't mean he's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to go right now. He's got to go right now. Biden, sexual assault allegation backed up by people who heard about it from the victim at the time. Nothing, not an interesting story. Nope. Now, what's going to happen? If Bernie drops out within 48 hours, that's going to be a massive story. Why? Because Trump's going to say it. And when Trump says it, they're going to say, well, I mean, there's nothing we can do. The president said it. We got to cover it. We got to cover it. The president said it. He did a big press conference about it. We got to cover it. So they're all going to talk about it 24/7 as soon as Bernie drops out. And you telling me that this media isn't biased? Come on, nobody in their right mind believes that. The mainstream media is the most biased thing in America. No wonder the Republicans despise them, and they've lost all credibility with anyone who isn't a multimillionaire so-called centrist. But I have one more. Go ahead.
Okay, I have so many thoughts, but I'll give you two that I have to make. So first, look, I've been consistent on this. I don't want Bernie to drop out. I think that this is the best opportunity for him to make his case because people are really feeling the pain that comes with our broken system when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to how everything is tied to employment, how some people are treated as second-class citizens if they don't have the resources for the healthcare that they need to survive. I mean, this is when he should be making his case. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. But like Bernie, it's the home stretch. Fight, please, fight. No more my good friend Joe. No more of that nonsense. He's got to be aggressive. And it's so like he's fought for us forever, for decades, right? But he's got to kick it up a notch when it comes to rhetoric, when it comes to tone, when it comes to force, because right now he's getting drowned out completely. And this is really his moment, or more importantly, this is the moment for his policy proposals to shine. So that's point number one. Point number two, look, I'm going to be honest. For me, the sexual assault allegations against Biden, that's not a small point. That's a huge point. And so in the past, there's always that pressure to vote for the lesser of two evils because Trump's a terrible person. You don't want Trump to be elected. And so you just grin and bear it and you end up voting for someone like Hillary Clinton, who you don't agree with on a lot of different political policies, but she's better than Trump. Okay. In the case of Joe Biden, how am I going to turn around and do these stories about this credible sexual assault allegation and then turn around and tell my audience, yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden? No. And so the Democratic establishment they think that they can just force it upon us and pressure us and intimidate us. And, there's always that implied threat about destroying your career by having principles and having morals and doing what you feel is the right thing when it comes to your vote. I cannot in good conscience support a candidate who has credible sexual assault allegations against him with the media ignoring it and refusing to do any type of investigation into it. I can't. I'm sorry.
So, Anna, you said something there, and I want to It's really important. I want to correct something I said. I said it's a small point. You're right. I said that, right? And I as you were talking, I realized why I said it. Because if you say the things that we're saying, the rest of the media, in their infinite corruption, say that no, that's it. You don't have credibility and you don't have legitimacy. You care about sexual assault. You're a terrible person. So you're right. It's not a small thing at all. And in fact, if I had said about any other case, including very questionable cases about entertainers, that it was a small deal, I would have had my head chopped off before. I mean, Me Too, Time's Up, etc. would have gone nuts. What do you mean small deal? What do you mean small deal? But now, if you back up a person who has a credible sexual assault allegation, they're like, how dare you? How dare you back up someone who thinks they were sexually assaulted? That's it. You're all censored. Your political correctness now flips to the other side and says you're not allowed to talk about it. And look, guys, think about it. One more thing in that regard, and then I want to make another important point about the election. Now, all talk of Donald Trump's sexism and every sexual assault, every sexual harassment, everything he's ever done is now off the table, because the Biden team is not going to want to bring it up, because then the Republicans will bring up Tara Reade, and then we're done. So that's it. We just took that completely off the table. Okay? There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And the minute you bring it up, Trump will do a press conference calling Biden a rapist. That's not me. That's him. Okay? You think he's not going to do it? Oh, because he also did it, he's going to want to avoid the topic? No. He goes over the top every single time. And now, so we've unilaterally disarmed on this. Other than being deeply immoral, it's also hugely stupid. All right, now the final part of it. So Biden can't finish the sentence. It's a fact. And we're all again supposed to say, nope, I can't see it with my own eyes. I can't hear it with my own ears. In fact, if you say things that are obviously true, like the guy has trouble finishing a thought, they say illegitimate, not credible. He's telling the truth. You got to remove him. You got to get him out. He's going to cost us the election by telling people the truth. You think the Republicans aren't going to talk about it? Trump's already talking about it. The minute Bernie Sanders is out of the race, within 48 hours, it will be wall-to-wall coverage of how Biden has mental decline. And they will absolutely pulverize him with it until either they withdraw Biden at the convention or we get our asses handed to us and we lose. And the minute we lose, they will then turn around and do the same exact thing they did in 2016. If Cenk and Anna hadn't said it, none of this would have happened. You know, because Republicans can't see video and they can't hear video. And so they wouldn't have known that Joe Biden can't finish a thought, and they wouldn't have done it. It was those rascally progressives. If they hadn't gotten involved, we would have gotten away with it.
Listen, the most important thing for me is being able to finish my job every day and sleep comfortably, knowing that I spoke from the heart and I remained principled and I did what I felt was moral, okay? I will never in a million years cast a vote for someone as hideous and vicious as Donald Trump. But at the same time, I am now, if like the Democrats get what they want, meaning the Democratic Party, and Biden is the nominee, they have put women like me in a position to like feel pressured to vote for someone who I feel uncomfortable voting for, right? The fact that they're trying to bury the sexual assault allegation it's mind-blowing to me, because how is this allegation different from the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh? And Cenk, you remember what the Kavanaugh story did to me, okay? That was a story that just broke me, and I couldn't even talk about it without tearing up, especially after that sham FBI investigation. And after I realized, oh my God, this guy's going to be confirmed. And I genuinely think that he did this to Dr. Ford, right? So what makes Biden's situation different, right? The only thing that makes it different is that the Democratic establishment and the corporate media has decided they're going to bury the story. Or if they ever say anything about it, they're going to go ahead and smear the woman, a former Biden staffer, who's come forward with the details of this alleged sexual assault. I don't know what else to say. I have to do what I think is right and what I feel comfortable doing. And I'm sure that there are going to be all sorts of threats. I'm sure there are going to be all sorts of vicious criticisms toward us and other progressives. But I don't know, come at me, because what you're asking me to do is vote for someone who has a very credible sexual assault allegation against him. And, you know, there were some people on Twitter arguing, well, Trump has way more sexual assault allegations against him than Biden does. Does that make it better?
Congratulations.
Wow.
Must be so proud. All right. Look, so what should Bernie do? The problem is, it's not in his nature to do the only avenue left. The only avenue left, if you're going to stay in, is to fight your way out of it. You can't go halfway and win. And if you're not going to win, then what's the point of staying in? So the only way to win is to say Biden can't finish a thought. We need Medicare for all. I'm not going to let you guys lose to Trump. I'm just not going to let it happen. And so fight like hell. And by the way, corporate media, you're the worst of the worst. So if you want to cry about me staying in the race, let's get it on. Bring it, and I'll bring it, and I'll meet you in the battlefield and make a ton of noise. But the media is going to pile on him. They all hate him. They're all biased. They're all the worst. And so they're going to yell at him no matter what he does. And if he fights them, they'll yell at him 1,000 times louder. The only way to get past that is to have enough national recognition like Bernie does and fight your way out of it like Trump does, honestly. So just keep fighting until you win the messaging battle. But I don't know that Bernie's got that in him. And so it's not for me to decide. It's for Bernie to decide. If Bernie thinks I'll fight my way out of this, then I'm behind him 100%. But half measures aren't going to do it. And so every indication is we should pick someone else. But the Democrats are making us walk the plank again. And when to mix up now the ship analogies, when we run into that iceberg, it wasn't the fault of the person who warned you about the iceberg. It was the fault of the person who ran into the iceberg. And that's the Democratic Party.
Oh, God. It's just... Anyway, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about Trump being an asshole about models. All right, let's just do the story. So in the middle of this pandemic, where more than 10,000 Americans have already lost their lives due to coronavirus, Donald Trump decided to make a joke about who he's slept with. Take a look.
You know what I want to do? I want to come way under the models. The professionals did the models. I was never involved in a model, but at least this kind of a model.
So as we know, he has great admiration for models. And so he made a joke there about sleeping with models in the middle of a presser about COVID-19.
Yeah. So two things about this. The second one's a twist. First one's obvious. Bozo the Clown is in charge. Look, you want to make a joke about models. I don't care about that at all. Under normal circumstances, have at it, Hoss. And I'm not with the media that's all stuck up and like, oh, I do declare, and politically incorrect joke about a model, right? But you're in the middle of a press conference about coronavirus. Yeah. Thousands of people are dying. It's not time for a model joke. And now, point 1A here is, hey, Christian evangelical right-wingers, what happened? What happened to, oh my God, I care so much about family values, and I care about morality. And by the way, pro-life. Is it pro-life to be flippant about coronavirus that's killed 10,000 people already in this country, and the cases are mounting? And yes, his wife is a model, but so are his mistresses. So yay, family values. Remember, all my mistresses were models. That's the kind of models I'm familiar with. Wait, what were we talking about? Oh, you people dying, whatever, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is controversial. Anna and I were talking about this over the weekend, and Joe Biden is a dud. And so when and people do vote based on who's more entertaining. Do I think that's rational? No, I think it's mental. But they do. And they're going to consider Trump more entertaining. And he put that Sleepy Joe thing on Biden, and it's not that incorrect. And that's why he did it. And again, we're going to be, the mainstream media and Democratic establishment is going to shoot the messenger. That's us. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that, as loathsome as it is, can help him win, and Biden doesn't have any of it.
No, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I don't even think that that's controversial. That's a controversial assessment. Like, obviously, there's a time and place to be personable and make jokes. In the middle of a COVID-19 presser, the last thing you should do is joke around about how many models you've slept with. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. But there is unfortunately, you're right, an entertainment value to Trump that doesn't appeal to people who actually care about policy, doing the right thing for the country, people who are looking for leadership. But there is some portion of the constituency that votes for people based on, of course, name recognition. But hey, who's the candidate that I want to have a beer with? Would you rather have a beer with Joe Biden, or would you rather have a beer with this guy who, let's face it, whether he intends to be or not, he can be funny, right? Sometimes we're laughing at him. Sometimes people are laughing with him. So I think that that's unfortunately an underestimated strength of Donald Trump's that I even overlooked the first time around in 2016. But now it's becoming more and more clear to me that those types of like offhand statements, for some reason, play well with some portion of the electorate. And it's something to keep in mind.
And when Biden was younger, I think that he actually arguably had a similar spirit. And he'd get in trouble for saying things he shouldn't say. But it made him a little bit more likable to some portion of the electorate, especially older voters, which unfortunately still today decide elections. So unfortunately, that's not the Biden of today. The Biden of today is lucky to finish a thought, and he will say things that are accidentally offensive, but not charming or funny. I mean, when he'll say things like, "Hey, look here, fat."
Ugh.
What is that? Right? So whereas Trump would take the same insult and like he'd say fatty or something. Hey, listen, fatty. And he'd mean it. And that's because he's a way worse person than Joe Biden. But people would like that. Whereas look here, fat doesn't make any sense. That's a lot of things that Joe Biden says now doesn't make any sense. And to say that he's not a dynamic speaker at this point in his career is a vast understatement. So
it's so devastating. It's so devastating that we found ourselves in this position again. I would argue even worse than it was in 2016. Devastating.
Yeah. And look, the Democrats' main hope is let's hope no one's paying attention. They remember the Biden of the past. He co-signed the name recognition and the nostalgia and the fact that Trump is so terrible. It's not that bad a strategy normally, but I don't know that Biden's going to make it all the way to Election Day by coasting. I know he's not actually. And so where does that leave us? It leaves us in the same exact position we were in 2016, where the Democratic Party strategy is, yes, people... we have a significant issue with our own candidate, but that's okay. We'll tell people all day long that Trump's a bad guy, and that way we'll win the election. How'd that turn out for us? So what's going to happen is they'll take clips like that, and they'll say, you see, Trump's a bad guy. But that didn't work electorally. That was not a winning strategy. So here we go again into the abyss.
All right. Well, that's what I have for you guys.
That's what we have for you. The abyss.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we got Wisconsin, it turns out. So tune in for that. And there will be plenty of rage on that show. But we have Old School at 8 o'clock Eastern, which I forgot to tell you in the regular show as always. And so that's the return of Old School. Don't forget that. Much love, and we'll see you tomorrow.